What's up, guys? So today I want to show you guys what I've been working on for the past couple of weeks, which is, as you can probably tell in the title of the video, is I made my own duckbill. The point of this video is to basically give a brief overview of everything I did. I'm going to kind of make like a mini series on it. I think it's like 3 parts about, I don't know for sure. I'm still editing it. But so I made the whole thing by myself from basically nothing to a mold. No, to the general form to a mold. So I'm going to, in this video, explain to you guys basically what I did and then show you how it turned out in the end. So in this video, I'm just going to give a brief overview of how I created this thing. I'm just going to go step by step, just basis on how I did it. I'm going to post future videos showing everything that I did and how I did it and why I did it. I'll probably do some voiceovers then and explain some other things, but right now I'm just going to explain everything. So step 1 is I had to cover the back of the car with tape and then some bags so that none of the stuff would go on the car because it could easily ruin the paint, and getting any of the material used off of the car would have sucked. So I used paint in the entire general area where the ducktail would be, and then I used black plastic bags or just even white. Yeah, I just used plastic bags. So I just covered it so that nothing would spill over, and I made sure I had plenty of excess just in case because I didn't want to ruin any of my paint. So step 2 is I covered the back, the general area with foam, with expanding foam. I'm going to link it, but basically the idea is to make a general shape with that foam. And then after I made the foam, I had to cut it out. Also, a quick tip about the foam is you're going to want to do multiple different layers, because I found that if you try to do it in one big layer, the center is not going to harden. It's going to stay soft, or it's going to take a long time to harden. So if you do several layers, like 3, 4, then it will take less time to harden than if you just try to do one big blob, and it will harden in a much just more even fashion. So then after you foam it, you shave it down to a general size of what you want. It just should be like, I don't know, just an approximate. So after you get the shape you want, you cover it in clay. And once you cover it in clay, you get the exact shape you want. So that make sure at this point that you get it exactly how you want it to be, and that there's nothing that you're going to have to be adding later, because that's going to be a pain in the butt. Because after you make the shape, then you're going to have to cover it. I used packaging tape, which probably wasn't the best idea because it kind of made like uneven lines. So I would have to experiment more with that. But yeah, just finding something to cover it so that you're able to split it. So after I covered it, this is now step 4. You make a mold with fiberglass. So essentially you take fiberglass sheet and a fiberglass resin, and then you put it over it. And I did 3 layers, which should be actually enough for a mold, especially if you're only going to use it once. So then I made a mold with the fiberglass. After I made the mold, I covered the inside with Bondo and then made it as flat as I physically could, so that it would be the general size of what I wanted, and so that it would have almost no imperfections, which I should have spent more time on, but I was kind of rushing it at this point because I didn't know I wanted to finish it as soon as possible, which ended up not happening in the end. So I probably should have taken more time. So in this step, make sure you make the inside as smooth as possible so you don't have a bunch of imperfections on your just piece, the fiberglass piece that you make after it. So after you cover the inside with a thin layer of Bondo and then sand it down, step 6 is you make the main part. And one thing I actually forgot to say is that you are supposed to use, whenever you make a mold, you're supposed to use some sort of separating agent. I just used some car wax that I had laying around, which kind of worked. It broke a piece off of the model, but it still separated, which was fine. So I ended up just using some car wax, and I used a ton of it, but it still didn't work perfectly. There are different things that you could use for separators. However, this is just what I used. So after you separate, after you finish the inside, after you Bondo it, some people paint it if they're going to use it several times. I believe I put, yeah, I put a layer of primer, and then I put the wax, and then I did the same thing for the mold I did for the final piece, where you just put it, where I put it in. It's just I cut the outside, I cut like corners. I cut the middle section so that it would fold on itself, and then I tried to get as little overlaying material as possible because it could probably cause imperfections. So yeah, you do this, you put the fiberglass into the mold, and then you use the resin. Make sure you have a paintbrush and make sure you press down every single place that it's perfectly down, because now even on my current ducktail, you can see different spots where it wasn't down fully and where different pieces did not fully connect, and there are just little bubbles, which is kind of a shame because you put all the work into it, and then you end up getting something that's not, you know, perfect, not exactly what you wanted. And that's a bee that's sitting on me. So yeah, essentially make sure you pat everything down so that it's as perfect as you want it to be. Well, so that it's as flat as possible, because you don't want any imperfections and you don't want to waste all your time. So after that, that's step 6. Step 7 is you cut out. After you finish it and separate it, you're going to want to cut it out to be how you want it to look. So, you know, you're going to have excess, you're just going to have excess fiberglass and then fiberglass sheeting. So what I first did is I cut off the sheeting with scissors so that I didn't have any just, you know, flopping around stuff. And then I took a Dremel, which you could probably take a faster tool like an angle grinder, but I used a Dremel. And make sure that you have heavy, just the cutting discs, because it took a long time. Ended up taking almost like a full day just to cut it out how I wanted it to be, because then you have to like shave it down. And then after that, I sanded it and I added Bondo onto the top. But first, on the inside, you're supposed to fill it with foam, because like, I don't know if you can see that, but it's more of a solid feel. It doesn't feel like it's a hollow, just piece of fiberglass. It feels like it's like a solid piece, even though it's really light. So filling it with foam is barely going to add any weight, but it's going to give it that like solid feel to it. That's completely what you want to do. And after you fill the inside with foam, you're going to want to kind of just like shave it down, kind of like you did the outside, and then fit it onto your trunk as much as possible so that it just lays down as perfectly as you can get it to. And then you're going to want to just cut a little indent where you have your mounts, because I have 2 holes in my bumper where the old little lip was, but this is a lot bigger, and I'd want that lip anyways. So I decided to keep those mounting points. So I used just some random, I don't know, just like flat. They were like flat squares and a nut that I had because I broke a window and I replaced it and ended up having just extras. I didn't use the old ones just in case I wanted to use them again. But after I had made the mounts, I basically put the mounts in and then bonded them in, and they held pretty well. So after I made the mounts, then I kind of, you know, finalized the entire outside where I bonded it and then I sanded it down. So I make sure that in this part you make it almost no imperfections. And also when you're sanding, make sure you're either using a palm sander if you're doing quick things, or when you're not, make sure you're using a block, because I made the mistake of using my hand and now there's kind of a wavy finish, which kind of sucks. But I'm keeping it now, and most people don't notice it until I start pointing it out. Something keeps flying around me. So yeah, make sure you use a block because you don't want the wavy finish. And even though it's not too noticeable, it still hurts me because I spent so much time on this thing and there's still those imperfections that are just killing me on the inside. So after you do all that, you fit it and make sure that it's perfect. You're gonna have to sand the outer layers so that it's as flat and it lays down perfectly, so that you don't have a bunch of random gaps. And then after you do that, you're gonna want to paint it. So I did 3 layers of just primer, and then I did a bunch of layers of paint because I just had paint, a good amount of paint. However, I had to sand it because they kept getting little holes in the Bondo that I didn't just fix right away. So, and I didn't want to add it on top of the paint because then I would have added a little of extra hump. So I ended up just doing a lot of paint. But normally this should take you only like 2-3 just runs of paint, and then you only have to resurface it in between, or you don't even need to resurface it, but that's just something I like to do. So after you paint it, then I did clear coat because I don't really trust the Walmart clear coat that they put in that they say they have in the spray, because I know a lot of people that it gets sun damage really quickly. So I had some spare clear coat. This only required a bottle of primer and a bottle of paint normally, but because I did so many extra layers, I had to get 2 bottles of paint. So after you paint it, just mount it to your car. I don't think I have any usable footage of the mounting of it because it was done on a super hot day. So the camera just kept overheating. I decided to put JB Weld on the double-sided tape on just the top part so that it would stick well, because the double-sided tape was like strong. It was stronger in some areas and weaker in others. So I wanted it to stay on as like solidly as possible. And now I might have the issue of when I need to take it off if I'm going to physically be able to. But it looks like almost all of the JB Weld is on the double-sided tape itself, so the double-sided tape should come off. Hopefully, crossing my fingers. What I would say that I learned from this is saving a couple minutes or even an hour or two here or there is not worth it in the long run, because every little part takes time. And if you're not willing to take that time, then it's not going to work out too well for you. Because anything you like just skip out on, there are parts that I took a lot of time on, there are parts that I took some less time on, and it's very evident which parts those were. So make sure you take that time and just do everything to the best of your abilities. Make sure you use a block when you're sanding it because you don't want the wavy lines, and make sure you make sure that there are no bubbles in your fiberglass, because it's just it's a terrible feeling when everything's done and then there are just bubbles in it. I don't know, that just almost ruined it for me. So would I say this whole thing was worth it? For me, yes. Because what I want to do is I want to try to do other things like this, and I felt this was a good introductory to what it's going to be. I now know on how much time it's going to take approximately. I now know that it's not just one, couple days easy done. Hopefully I can learn from the mistakes that I made here, because I didn't lay the fiberglass down all the time. I didn't Bondo it perfectly. I kind of rushed the mold. I rushed some other things. And now I know that all those things need to be done. I now know to make sure there are no bubbles. I now know to keep the Bondo as flat as possible. So I'm going to have to block sand everything. So personally, I would say this was worth it. However, if you're just trying to make a quick buck by copying something that someone else did, like say that someone in China sold it for $200, the same thing, you're going to want to go for the bot method, because this thing ended up costing me quite a bit. I would say right now in the range of 150, because I bought the fiberglass and everything and the resin and everything like that. And so it ended up costing me a fair amount, even though I can reuse a lot of the stuff, but still, it just ended up costing me a lot more than I expected. And so much time was put into it. There was a week that I couldn't use my car because so much of my time was put into this. I couldn't use my car for like a week or two because I had the mold, and then the model, and then I put the mold on it. So I had to wait for all of that to be done. And then plus I had to cut everything, and then I had to always be working on it. There were some nights that I didn't go to sleep till like 3 a.m. working on it. And again, I worked mostly at night, but still there was just so much time that I put into it. Even though this was, I had a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. It was, cool making something with my own hands. I would say if you're trying to just save a quick buck, this is not it. Get a job. I don't know, work Uber Eats, or I don't know if that's going to still be available in California, but work DoorDash. You'll make a lot more in the 20 hours that you could work in DoorDash, or the 40 hours that it takes to make this thing. So If you want to create other stuff like this is a great project to take because it's a small thing that will, you know, look pretty cool on your car. It makes, especially if you make your own thing, no one else will have the same exact thing, which is what I really like to do in my cars. I like to, just like as you can see in my other Justy videos, I want to try to do something that either no one else has done or not many other people have done. So I hope you guys learned something from this video. If you liked it, please give a like. Subscribe would be dope too. Hopefully I can keep putting out content. I know I skipped a week, but yeah, I've been kind of busy, and hopefully I can get more Justy videos out to you guys. Thanks. So this is how it turned out. There are definitely different warps that you can see. As you can see, it's not completely straight. That little indent there is on purpose, but it's not completely straight. However, in the shade, you can't really see that. In the light, you can see it bouncing off differently. This is about the style that I want to go with. It's not completely straight. That was my fault. I didn't put it on correctly. And also, I still need to put silicone in between here. Because you can see there are little like gaps. So it's not the best thing in the world, but it did, you know, turn out nice for a first project. There are definitely things that I could have done better,